And so when I realized that I was really picking a shawl because I wanted it to function like a blanket, then I should just pick a blanket, right? Why would I make a shawl to be like a blanket, to use like a blanket, when I really just, that's all I want is a blanket. So I've said blanket too many times. I hope you're not playing a drinking game. Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Knitty Natty. Welcome to episode 172 of the Love in Stitches podcast. Today is Tuesday, March 14th, 2023, and it was snowing this morning. I can't believe that we have made it to March and we've barely had any snow here in New York City. This is only our second winter here and we really haven't seen a lot of snow. I realized today, and I feel like I'm going to jinx this, but I haven't had to put on boots to go outside except for maybe one time this year. And normally I only have to wear boots because the sidewalks are salted and it's really dirty and there's like snow on the side, but not this year. And that has been absolutely amazing. Okay, so today I'm wearing my Something Cozy by Shayna Billow. It is out of a Chelsea Luxe yarn and it's a super duper crop. You don't have to make it this cropped, but I would recommend lengthening it if you don't like it super cropped. I've gone like high-waisted jogger pants today, so it's so comfortable, just like the name implies. I cannot even tell you how much I love and wear this all the time. And today being so cloudy and kind of snowy, and now it's kind of just cloudy actually, I just wanted to like be comfortable in something for the podcast. Okay, one more thing before we get started. If your name is Renee or Tracy, go watch last week's episode because you may be the winner of one of the prizes from the 30,000 subscriber giveaway. I haven't heard from any of the winners yet. The podcast has only been out for a couple of days at this point, so I want to give a little more time before I try to reach out to people, but it's hard to find and reach out to people on YouTube because the only way I have to contact them is via a comment. So I'm trying to hold off on doing that a little bit longer. So maybe if that's your name, you want to go watch last week's podcast, maybe go into the news segment, which is where I announce the winners. All right, let's move on to the projects. The first thing I want to talk about is my Citrine Light, but I do want to share this bag again. I think I've shared it most of the time when I've shared this project, but it's just becoming my favorite bag right now. So this is a bag from Krista Jekyll. I'll show the tag in just a second, but I like it because of the size and because it's lightweight but still structured but still soft enough to squish, and it closes at the top, which is great. But it also has these handles that are long enough to go over my shoulder, but not long enough to get in the way. And the way they're sewn on, they just like flop down. So it's really easy to work out of. I've already been really liking this bag, but over the last couple weeks, I traveled and went on a plane and I wanted to bring a larger project, which didn't fit into my backpack. So I ended up carrying this with me onto a train, onto a bus, around the airport, onto the airplane. And it was easy to do because it just stayed on my shoulder, it was lightweight, and I didn't have to like leave my big project behind, which was so amazing. Let me get the project out of the way that I'm gonna show here in just a second, my sweater project. The tag is on the inside. Here we go. Krista Jekyll. There we go. Couldn't recommend it more. Really, really love, love, love this bag. And when you do open it up, it'll stand up, especially when it has yarn in the bottom, but that like drawstring part will fall into the inside, which is great. Oops, I lost a little bit of yarn. Okay, let's talk about my first project. So this is the Citrine Light by Emily Green. I did have a question on the last podcast about how I felt the pattern was written and if I would recommend patterns by Emily Green. This is my first Emily Green pattern and I think it's written really, really well. They have so many great descriptions. It's just laid out nicely. There's a lot of really smart things in here. I haven't ever felt like I don't know what I'm doing. There's always a place to find a resource. The tutorials are written out rather than in video form, but you could also just like go find a video tutorial from somebody else if that's your preference, which I think I did do for one thing. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Again, this is only my first pattern from Emily Green, but I think it's a really, really great one. She also recommended in the pattern itself, if you wanted to combine different body and sleeve sizes, and makes notes throughout the pattern of when to keep an eye out for that. She doesn't exactly walk you through like, okay, this is what you need to do, but it gives you a heads up if you are making that change, which I did because I am making a size 2 body size and a a size 3 sleeve size. So I knew where to look at in the pattern. This is something I've started doing more often for myself because my arms kept coming out too small, the armhole was too small, the sleeve was too small, and so now I know I just need to make that change, and that's okay. Okay, so let's see, where was I last week? So this is a very lovely, simple, but like beautiful details kind of sweater. You can really now see that lovely like shoulder detail since I finished the first sleeve last week. Last week I had blocked this, like I had taken it off of the needles, I put it on try it on tubing, I blocked it, and I had tried it back on and it was coming out really, really nicely. That kind of gave me the push I needed to keep going on this because it is a lot of repetitive stitches, a lot of stockinette, a lot of twisted rib. But now I have a plan, which is again, making me even more motivated. You know what, before I get to that, I should show you the yarn. Hang on just a second. I didn't pull this out before I got started here. I love this yarn so much. This yarn is Magpie and Spin Cycle, and it is called Fior de Latte. It's their dyed in the skein base, and I ordered a new skein. It got here, I think the day I filmed the podcast last week, and then I had to figure out what I wanted to do. So here's the story. I ordered 4 skeins of this yarn to make the Alpenglow last September. I ended up not liking it for my Alpenglow, got some different yarn, and then this yarn sat in stash. And I really wanted to make a simple, beautiful sweater out of it. I just didn't know what to make. So when I saw this in like November, December, I think this pattern came out, I thought perfect, but I'd already bought the yarn in a quantity for a different sweater. And so I realized that I probably wasn't gonna have quite enough for this sweater. I had played with the idea of making the sleeves, instead of doing the twisted rib, making them stockinette. And then I don't know, I just thought that was gonna work. I was just like hoping that it would work. So fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, and one of you reached out to me on Instagram and said that the Spin Cycle store had one more skein of this yarn. And so I reached out to them, I was able to snag the skein, and so I added one more skein, a 5th skein, to have 5 in total. And then I needed to figure out, where do I put the skein into my sweater? I had 4 skeins bought at once. There were 1 dye lot and another skein that is not from the same time, right? So I was like, okay, where to put this in? My thought was to keep the original 4 skeins in the top of the sweater and the sleeves. So I'd already completed 1 whole sleeve with one of the original skeins, and I had just a teensy little bit left. So I figured I would use the little bit that was left, I think it was like 16 grams, in the body. I would save another one of the original skeins for the sleeve, which is what I've done this week. So I've started my 2nd sleeve. So I've got 1 ball of yarn attached here at the sleeve, and that's working out great. Then I took that little bit that was left over from the sleeve and I started it into the body. And I know you can't, actually you can see. Can you see that line where I started again after blocking? It's right here. So this is blocked fabric, unblocked fabric. It'll all be fine when I block it again at the end. So I added that little bit in, did 1 round, then I added in that 5th and final oddball skein, the one that I got last, and I started to helical knit. So I was blending one of the original skeins of yarn, the bit that was left over from the sleeve, 1 row of that, 1 row of the 5th out side of the original one's skein. I feel like I'm making this way more complicated than it is. The colors are really, really similar. Honestly, I couldn't tell a difference. And so I just thought blending it was that extra insurance I needed to not have a really sometimes it's hard to tell on the skein or the cake, but then when you knit it into the sweater, it's a very obvious difference. I don't see a color difference here. I just see a textural difference where I started to knit again, and again, that will block out. So I used up all of what was left from the sleeve skein. Now I'm just working with this 5th skein. So all of my yarn is now attached to the sweater. I've got 2 balls of yarn here, 1 ball attached to the sleeve and 1 set of needles on the sleeve, and 1 ball attached to the body and 1 set of needles on the body. So the way that I'm doing this, because I am using my new set of Lantern Moon needles, and I need the same size needle for the sleeve and the body, and that is a size 4 for me. And so what I've done, because these are both knit in the round, you can actually set up your interchangeable needles where the left-hand needle is a smaller needle and the right-hand needle is your needle size that you need. So I've got, I feel like it's easier if I turn around. In my right hand, I have my size 4 needle, and my left hand, I have a size 3, because you're always knitting with the right-hand needle. This is for right-handed knitters. This is for people who knit directionally from right to left. If you're like a true left-handed, you knit the opposite direction, you already know to reverse this. Okay, so I've got my needle that I have that it's supposed to be the size 4 on my right hand, and this one is a size 3, so size 4, size 3. And since I'm always knitting with the one in my right hand, it's always a size 4. When you switch to back and forth flat knitting, don't do this. And so then that allowed me to make a whole nother size 4 needle here for the sleeve so that I can have both of them attached. This I'm doing magic loop. So I've started the sleeve. Now when I did the sleeve cap, which is short rows, I had to borrow that size 4 needle tip because I was working back and forth flat and I needed both needle tips to be the same size, size 4. So then when I went to in the round, I was able to switch it again where it's still the same concept, even on magic loop. This needle, the left-hand needle, the one that just is a, what is it called? I feel like the right-hand needle is the working needle and the left-hand one's like the feeder needle or the resting needle. It doesn't actually make the stitches, it just holds them, it just feeds them. So that one is my size 3, the smaller one, and I'm always working with my size 4, always. So that's a little hack for interchangeable needles to allow you to create even more needle sets. This only works if you still have a size smaller, right? If I needed to make size 3 needles, I don't have size 2 in this set, so I couldn't make 2 sets of size 3 circular needles. If you lost me there, don't worry, we're not going to talk anymore about that. So that's where I've been working this past week. I was waiting for that new skein of yarn to get in. I needed to decide. I wound it up, decided where to put it in, and then I did. For some reason, my stitch marker, my progress keeper is on the back here. I did, I don't know, a couple inches here on the body. And I am probably going to shorten the body a little bit, which is very unusual for me. I know that I need about a 15-inch body, and the way the pattern's written, it's 16 inches, and I don't think I really want it to be that long, but I'm going to try it on. The designer says go to a certain point, like suggests a certain number of inches, but says, or within X number of inches of final length, like desired length. I think there's also supposed to be 3 inches of twisted rib on the bottom, and I'm kind of considering making it just 2 inches of twisted rib, not just because I don't want to do that much twisted rib, but also because I want it to be more balanced, and there's nowhere else on the sweater where there's 3 inches of rib. A lot of times it's to match the cuff of the sleeve or whatever, but the whole sleeve is twisted rib. So I'm thinking about it. I don't really know yet what I'm going to do, but just as a semi test, I am like at a cropped, very super cropped length right now. I think I have 8 inches or something like that. No, maybe I have about 10 inches on the body. So I think I need to go 3-ish more inches on the stockinette part, and then I'll do the rib on the bottom. So very excited that I'm getting super close. But my goal this week really is to work through the first sleeve. I have both yarns attached and both needles attached, so I can switch between working on the body or the sleeve, whatever is kind of feeling like something I want to work on. But since the sleeve is my goal this week, that's mostly what I'm doing. I'm really just working on the body in the mornings when I am doing my 30 minutes of knitting and reading, just so that I still make progress on the body and get a little break from all the twisted rib. So when I go to work on the sleeve, what I've been doing is here's the body yarn. I've been taking it and putting it inside the sweater like that. Oops, it just fell off the neck hole. If I don't just drop it like that, it will pretty much stay inside the sweater here. It's inside right there. And that way I am free, like I don't have another ball of yarn like trailing on the floor or anything. I'm free to just work my sleeve back and forth. I really like magic loop for sleeves because just magic loop is my preferred way to do a small circumference in the round. But the thing I like about it for sleeves particularly is that in magic loop, you can knit, flip, back. Well, let me explain that a little bit better. So when you have a double pointed needles, you have to continuously go around and around, which means your sleeve is going to keep going around and around and twisting if you don't then rotate your entire sweater. Same thing for small circumference circular needles. You're going around and around in a circle. You have to, at some point, you have to rotate the entire sweater. On magic loop though, you don't have to go in a continuous circle. You can knit and flip one way, work the other side, and then you just have to remember to go the opposite way back so that you're going knitting across, flipping, knitting across, flipping back. And you can just keep rotating like this. And I just find it so much faster than having to move the whole sweater, and maybe just more comfortable. I mean, I already have a preference for magic loop knitting anyway, but if you needed another reason why to do it on sleeves, there is one for you. So how did I come to this conclusion of what I'm gonna work on for the sleeves? I finally got myself together and spent a lot of time over the past week. Oh, it's snowing again. It's just flurrying, but it's still pretty to watch. I spent a lot of time over the last week getting my project planning together. I'm actually gonna have a project planning video for spring coming out here soon. So be on the lookout for that. That will be next week's video. But I decided to do the last 3 weeks of March first before thinking ahead. And I decided I want to finish this sweater by the end of March. And that gives me 3 weeks to do it. So this is the first of 3 weeks that we're in right now. Next week will be the second to last week of March, and then the last week of March. March is just, I know there's other months that are as long as March, but March feels like one of those really long months, and it feels like we have extra time to get things done. I think because February is so short and January is just like a shock to the system because it's a new year. So March feels really good to get things done. So I just did a modified version of what I normally do, which is brainstorming all the projects, writing out the weeks and the dates, and then putting in any kind of schedule that I want to potentially keep. So this is how I have mapped it out. Sleeve number 2 is for this whole week. So I'm hoping that by the time it's Tuesday today, by the time I get to next Sunday, I will be finishing this sleeve. That leaves me then 2 more weeks to do the body and the ribbing. Everything else on the sweater is done. The neckline is done. It's not a cardigan, so there's no ribbing band or anything like that. So I divided up the amount of knitting I have left on the body, which at that time was 7 total inches. So 3.5 inches for next week on the body. That will take me pretty much to the ribbing. And then the final 3.5 inches, which would include the ribbing, in that last week of March. That's just kind of how I like to map things out. Honestly, if I'm being honest about how much I just believe in myself in such a delusional and happy way, in a harmless way, I guess I should say. I totally think I'm gonna finish this sweater in the next week. I mean, sorry, not next week. Next 2 weeks. I don't think it's gonna take me until the end of March. It would be so amazing if I could totally finish it ahead of time. I have a new sweater I wanna cast on at the end of March / beginning of April. So I would love actually a little bit of buffer time in between those sweaters to really just get that feeling of done, have the sweater done sooner and get to wear it while it's still potentially cold outside. I mean, given that it's snowing today, I think I have some time to wear it, but that's my plan. If you like talking about planning stuff, you're really gonna like Tuesday's video where I'm talking about all my projects that I'm planning for the spring. Okay, let me put this guy away and we'll move on to my next project. Amazingly, I only have one other WIP right now. Everything else I've just cleared out of the system. Either I decided I'm not working on it right now, which is one way to just get things out of sight, out of mind, and like feeling off my plate, or I finished them. I'm genuinely down to 2 WIPs, which feels so good. So that means I was able to make a decent amount of progress on this one as well. So this is the Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague. If you've been watching in the last 6 months, you've seen these hats a lot. So I made about, let's see, from my cute little cake marker, I've done what, I don't know, 4 inches or so, a decent amount. I had a lot of opportunities for simple, easy knitting out and about of the house over the last week. We went to a Broadway show, we went to a hockey game. I had some appointments that I went to that I knitted in the waiting room. So none of this was done at home. This is solely a project to have on the go and out and about. I am a little tempted actually to work on it at home now because I am close to moving on to my next section. But before I share that, let me share about the yarn. So this yarn is from, The Little Wolf Knits in her Sunfish base, which is a 75-25 fingering weight. And it was a special colorway dyed for the Love in Stitches membership, which we named Love in Speckles. So it's a really special colorway and I want to use it all up. So that's why a Musselburgh is a perfect way to do it, because I know now, after making a lot of them, how I can use up like most of the yarn. So my plan for this one is to do ribbing in the middle section of this hat. So this is a hat where you knit it twice as long as a normal sized hat, plus with enough length to roll up. That's how I like to have mine. And then you fold one layer inside the other, so you have a double layer hat. When you fold up the double layer brim, you actually get 4 layers around the ears. It's such a great hat. I love all the other ones I've made, and I haven't done a version yet where there's just ribbing in the center. So I need to update my project page on this, but I did write down the number of inches for each section that I'm thinking right now. So I'm going to talk about the segment, the part of it that's just in between the crowns. So you can see I've done 1 crown here. You start here and increase all the way down to, I think right there is the last increase. So measuring from the last increase to where I'll start the next decrease, I want that to be 19 total inches. I've just found that that really works for my head and that leaves me with enough yarn to still do the next crown. For me, the crown takes about 8 grams, so I try not to leave myself anything less than 10 grams just in case something happens and this crown all of a sudden takes a lot more yarn. So I'll go until I have 10 grams left, do the crown, and I usually end up with about 2 grams remaining. This worked out on my last hat, so fingers crossed. So for the middle to be ribbing, I want 3 inches of ribbing. So that's gonna be times 2, so that I have 3 inches on either side of the hat. So the middle 6 inches will all be 1 by 1 rib. And then on either side, I need stockinette. So 19 in total, minus 6, that middle 6, so that is 13. And then I divided that 13 in half. So I know this is like a terrible visual. I should have brought my other Musselburgh hat in here, but it'll make more sense when I do it on this hat. So 6 in the middle, and then 13 divided by 2. So that's 6.5 of stockinette on this side, 6.5 of stockinette on this side. So that's gonna leave me 6.5 inches. I think I'm at like 6 inches now. So I just have another 1/2 inch or so to go, and then I'll start the ribbing for another 6 inches, 6.5 inches of stockinette on the other side, and then the other crown. I'll put it on my project page because I know that's a lot to like visually think about, but I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying the hat as always. I think that I'm just in a hat phase right now. I was in a sock phase for so many years, like 4 or 5 years, and I am kind of like, I love socks and I will knit socks, but I kind of have like sock week and sockmas, and then I'm on a sock break until those things. At least it feels like right now. So knitting the hats are perfect because I have something that's an easy take around project, and it's also a fun way to show off some of those like beautiful single skein yarns. Even though that was my last whip, I actually have some projects that I am working towards casting on that I talked a little bit about last week, but I have made another step towards the actual casting on process. And I feel like these still count as projects because it takes a lot of time to make decisions about projects. You know, you're thinking about what you want to start, what designs, what patterns you want to do. Then you're trying to find the yarn, whether you're looking through your stash and testing it out, or shopping in person or shopping online. And then, you know, you have to swatch and you need to measure yourself and you need to pick sizes. And we don't always talk about those parts of the pattern process or the knitting process or crochet process. It's kind of like when you paint a room and you just really want to paint because that's like the fastest part and the most fun and the most effective part, like you see it the most, but you have to sand and you have to patch holes and you have to tape everything out. I feel like that's what picking out yarn and what swatching and all of that stuff is equivalent to. That's my metaphor of the day here. And I am learning to enjoy that part more because I've been giving myself fewer projects. I've been giving myself more space and time to really make decisions that I'm happy about, and then therefore making projects that I'm really happy and finished objects that I'm really happy about. And I don't think that you need to do what I've done, which is like get rid of all of my stash and really plan my projects. But I can say that that has helped me get to this point because with all the other noise of all my yarns that I felt guilty about not working on, and having so many projects that were just in this in-between stage of am I working on them, am I not? I just didn't have the brain space for that kind of stuff. And so I have been spending a lot of time prepping is basically what I'm trying to say. Okay, so the project. Last week I talked about starting an All of the Lights cardigan by Joji Locatelli. You can see what it looks like right here. It's a beautiful cabled sweater. I've been wanting to knit this for so long. It is getting annoying to me that I haven't started it and I just keep talking about it, so I can't imagine how it must feel for all of you, like, knit it already, Natalie. So I'm going to. I started a swatch last week with a really fun yarn. It is Hedgehog Fibers, and it is called Tweety. It's been a very popular yarn. I used the Bliss color. Now I just got one ball of it because I wasn't sure if I would like the feel of it for my sweater. So I had started a stockinette swatch and I showed it last week, and I was sharing that I just wasn't really sure if this was the right yarn for this sweater. It's like getting dark in here now because the clouds are just covering everything. It's so cool. Sorry, distraction. So I shared that I wasn't feeling sure, and a lot of you have some really, really helpful feedback for me. There were many people who said that they really liked the yarn, that they'd used the yarn. I think a few people mentioned they had knit the Winter's Beach Cardi by Andrea Mowry, which is a cardigan that has cables on it. And that is really funny because that is the exact cardigan that I saw in person at Vogue Knitting Live. A random person that I didn't know in one of my classes. I saw their sweater, they had used the gray, and I asked if I could feel the yarn, I could feel the sweater, and I just thought it looked so, so great. It's just, this yarn is subtle, but it has the little color pops, and it was so fun in a cabled sweater. And that's when I really got the desire to work with this yarn. And so a lot of you were sharing that you really liked the yarn, it was great for cables, it softens up, and just encouragement for using the yarn. And then there was another group of people who were saying kind of like, okay, if you're like me personally, if you're not sure, if it feels a little bit scratchy to you, somebody said they like saw me like itch my neck after I had put it up against my neck. So there was just a lot of helpful comments in like both directions, and I feel like getting help from opinions from others is actually really helpful and can kind of guide you towards what you were leaning towards in the first place. But there was a comment, and I'm not going to get the exact wording. I think it was actually a direct message to me. I'm not really sure exactly where I saw this, but it was like, if you're already questioning it, then you're probably leaning towards a no. Wait, maybe somebody said this to me in person. I don't know, I'm mixing a few things together, but all of that really led me towards deciding that this is not the right yarn for me right now for this project. I may just not be a rustic yarn person, and I don't want anyone to think that this is not a good yarn to use or that it's in general scratchy. It's just not right for me. I really like it though, it's so cute. So that was a big decision to make. And once I had decided that, sometimes it's just talking through it out loud that helps me decide, I went into deciding what yarn I do want to use. And my friend Brianna, who is the Little Wolf Knits, the yarn that I was sharing earlier, she had mentioned to me several months ago when I was still talking about this cardigan and wanting to make it at some point, that she had a beautiful color that she thought I would really like that just really seemed like me. So I started messaging with her. She told me the colorway. I got into her site. I started to get excited and think, oh my gosh, this is gonna feel really good. I really like the color. It's gonna be so much fun to work with. And just realized that like, that's what I needed to feel when I was picking out yarn for this sweater. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to find the perfect yarn because it is a dream project for me to work on. I've wanted to do it for so long. It's gonna be a lot of knitting and a lot of work, and I'm really excited for it. And I didn't wanna make the wrong choice. And so I don't know, I was just like, I was way overthinking it, and I was also trying to force myself into using this yarn just because I liked the look of it, but remembering that I also needed to like how it felt when I was knitting it and how it's gonna feel when I'm done wearing it, because it would be wild to put a ton of work into something and then not want to wear it. So I decided to get this beautiful yarn. I've got a picture here of what it looks like. It is called Seashell by the Little Wolf Knits, and I ended up ordering an extra skein of it so that I have plenty to swatch with. I feel both very grateful that I'm able to do this. I think you know, knitter Natalie from a few years ago would not have been able to order an extra skein just financially, because you know, it's already a lot to get a sweater's quantity of yarn, and that's just the way I had to make it work. So I'm feeling very grateful that I'm at a point now where like knitting is my job. And so I am getting as much yarn as I think that I'm gonna need, plus a little extra, so that I can just really feel secure about this big, big project. I also don't know if I'm gonna use slightly more yarn when I combine a larger sleeve size and maybe add length or something like that. So I just wanted to have that extra. So I ended up ordering 9 skeins, 9 skeins of DK weight yarn, and I am so excited for it. I knew it was the right choice after I could feel those good, exciting feelings. So this yarn is going to be going to somebody in the Love and Stitches membership. We have a D-stash thread on our Discord, and I am going to go ahead and just let go of that yarn and send it off to somebody who's very excited about it. So I feel good about that too. But yeah, that's the decision that has been made. So no knitting yet, no swatching yet. The yarn will be here in a couple of weeks. And so for now, I'm just excited and ready for this new project. Did you think I was done talking about potential projects? Nope. I did spend like hours planning out projects over this last week, which was so fun. I find that I do this every couple of months, and it's mostly because that's when I feel like the energy to do it and the excitement to do it. And I'm like at a point where I'm almost finished with some projects, ready to start new ones, and I just need to take a weekend day usually and sit down and like sit in front of my yarn and sit in front of my project bags and clean things up and refresh things, and it just feels so good. It is one of the parts of knitting that is not knitting that I find fun. And so I just love doing it. So this one I actually have the yarn for. I'm using yarn out of stash, and this is going to be a scrap-free 2023 project, so it's in the big bag. This is a bag by Little Skein and the Big Wool. I don't think they're making these anymore. This is a sweater, I think it was called the sweater bag or blanket bag or something like that. So I am cherishing and holding on to this one for sure. So last week I had talked about using my Fangirl Fibers Disney Advent Calendar. I was thinking about making a very lovely shawl called Delight by Laura Nelkin, but I have since decided against it, and I want to explain why. So what I was getting this feeling of not feeling super excited about starting this project and feeling like I was only making it just to use the yarn. And while that is something that was a goal for me last year, is to use stash, I learned that you don't just have to use yarn, or you don't have to knit or crochet with yarn in order to use yarn. You can share it with other people. You can use it for something else. You can change the project. Anyway, basically, do you hear that? It's a very funny sounding siren. You don't have to force yourself to work with yarn that you don't want to in most cases. Where for me, I'm not making something for somebody, I'm not getting paid to make something for somebody, I'm not sample knitting, it's just, it should be fun. I should be using something that I'm excited about, or I should at the very least be picking patterns that I'm feeling very excited about. So, not to say that the shawl pattern is not a great pattern, it is very beautiful. But what I realized is that I picked a shawl when I originally planned all of my scrap-free 2023 projects in January, because I wanted to do something different. I had a lot of blankets on the docket, and I just thought, well, I want to do something that's different than a blanket. I want to knit something instead of crochet, because I'm doing a lot of crochet blankets, and I just need to mix things up. But let me pick a shawl that is blanket size so I can kind of use it as a blanket, because that's what I want. And so when I realized that I was really picking a shawl because I wanted it to function like a blanket, then I should just pick a blanket, right? Why would I make a shawl to be like a blanket, to use like a blanket, when I really just, that's all I want is a blanket. So I've said blanket too many times. I hope you're not playing a drinking game. All right. So I picked a blanket pattern. I went through a pattern favorites bundle that I created in December, actually maybe just before December, and it's still there. It is an Advent pattern bundle, so it's great for any of those Advent packs that you have, or mini skein packs, or even just your own personal leftover skeins or scraps that you want to put together into something. So I will make sure to leave that link down below. Hold on, let me make a note. Okay, I'll make sure to leave that link. So I went through there and I had my eye on this blanket. It is called Quadrophenia by KF Jones. It is a knitted blanket that starts in the middle and works its way out, but it's actually knit in 4 pieces. So it's kind of like 4 shawls or 4 triangular pieces that are then seamed together. I am planning to do this way, even though the word seam kind of makes me not want to make it, but I think it will be great to work in this way because it will remain exciting. I can start one piece and work my way all the way through, or I can work a part of each one. Anyway, I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do it. It's not started yet. I was about to start it, but then I realized that I really want to get my Citrine Light sweater finished. I need the same needles for it anyway, so why don't I just finish my sweater, then start the blanket. That is something that is working best for me right now, is having not too many projects going. Okay, so let's just talk about the yarn. I'm gonna mostly use pictures, although I have the yarn now like all organized in here. It's not as easy to show, so I'll just set that to the side. So what I did is I had already taken a photo and pulled all the labels out of the yarn and organize it in a way that I could put them back together, because I didn't want to keep this Advent calendar in the paper packages in the box that it came in. I wanted it to be easier to store in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. So first thing I did is I took everything out and I lined it all up in order. So you can see that here in this picture. They're all lined up. And then I actually pinned each of the labels back on. I don't think I have a picture of that, so I can just show you that I've pinned with a, what are they called? Light bulb stitch marker, all of the labels back on here. I already numbered them, so that really was super easy. And then I had Kent help me. So I wanted to figure out how should I arrange the colors for this blanket. So I have a picture of the blanket laid out flat here. So take a look at this. It is the 4 like triangular sections. So I decided that I would look at the center 4 colors as a group. Then the second level of each piece, that like second stripe, as a group, and just so on from there. So instead of looking at a whole triangular section and planning that, I planned kind of circularly. So a group of 4, a group of 4, a group of 4, a group of 4. And I put these groups together to have similar colors. And that's when Kent came in to help me. So here's our piles of 4 that we created. And these are actually, you can't tell in the photo, but these are all based on like collections together. So when Emily did this advent calendar, I can't even remember if I've already said that it's Disney or not. It's Disney Fangirl Fibers. There are different areas of Disney World. So there's Adventureland and Fantasyland. Then there's some like general things about the park like Main Street, Mickey balloons, popcorn bucket, things like that. So all of these groups are themed, and Kent was much more adamant that they had to actually, the names actually had to go together, whereas I was looking more at the colors. Like, let's get everything that's kind of purpley blue together. Let's put all of the like brown, green, yellows together. And so I can balance them in the blanket, but he wanted them to fit the theme of the names of the yarn. So that was actually really fun. We enjoyed doing that together, and I am really glad that he was invested in that and helped me with it. So after I had my bundles of 4, then I started to actually place them out for the blanket. So I picked for the center colors that I really liked because those wedges are quite big. They're the ones that are the most triangular and the widest because they're the least number of stitches. So I wanted that to be something I really, really liked, and I was thinking purpley blues for that. I can't remember exactly what we settled on, but again, this was all Kent. He insisted that we start it in the way that we normally go to Disney and go to the parks, like the order we actually go in the day. And I can't remember exactly how we did it, but that's how we started to lay things out. So I did the center 4, and then he would say, okay, this is the next group, because then we go to Tomorrowland or whatever. And so I would grab that, and then I would arrange them how I thought they looked best on top of each other, trying to keep colors balanced throughout the entire blanket. So we did that for all of, it's groups of 4, but there were 6 groups of 4, 24 total. So I did that for all of the 6 groups of 4, and then I took this picture, this final picture of how everything looks laid out so that I have it ready to go. And then I put everything in here. I actually numbered them. So I have an A group, a B group, a C group, and a D group. And then I have like A1 is the center, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6 is the outside, and I just have them all labeled like that. I don't know if you can really see. And so I could just throw them into here, and that made it really, really easy. So I think that's one that I'm gonna work on later. I actually have wound up my first one because I thought I was gonna start it. And this is, what does it say? Oh, A1. And this is my favorite color of the whole thing. It's mini ears. I think it's really, really cute. So I am ready to start this whenever I can. I think this is the B group in here. C and D are in here. And then I have, oh, it's so pretty. I have just my A group, my first whole thing just in here. I don't remember what the order is right now. I'm just gonna hold them up together. But it's gonna be so fun. It's just bright, happy colors with some like, most of them have a white cream background. It's gonna be so pretty. And the biggest thing again is that as I was planning out this project, I was having so much fun, and I was so excited to get cast on. And that was a feeling I wasn't getting when I was thinking about it being a shawl, but I was getting that feeling when I was thinking about it being a blanket. And that was just another sign to me that this is the right project to choose. So I'm very excited about this. I'm planning to, hang on, let me get these things cleaned up. I'm planning to start this in the next couple of weeks. I do want to finish my Citrine Light sweater first, which is another reason I'm like, it's got to be finished in 2 weeks, not 3 weeks, because I got to get this blanket started. And then I will just try to knit on this blanket as much as I can. My original goal for this set of Advent yarn was to work on it in March and April, because I did plan for it to be a knitting project and I knew it would take me longer. But it's looking like I'm not going to start it until the end of March. So it may be, and I'm saying it may be, it will be unrealistic to finish it all in April. So I'll be adjusting my plans as needed. But as of right now, I'm just really excited about the project, and I wanted to share the process with you so you can kind of see everything that I'm thinking about for this new project. We're throwing in a little bonus section here because there was something I wanted to talk about last week that I just didn't have time with such a long podcast. And that is a couple of things that I have acquired and my classes that I took at the Knitting in the Hills retreat. So just real quickly, we're not gonna hang on to this section for too long, but I did want to share that I am the lucky recipient of a full set of Chaigu double pointed needles. So I recently shared that I wanted to build out my double pointed needle collection because I've been finding double pointed needles are really nice for certain like finishing aspects of a project. So picking up stitches, working I-cord bind-offs, working I-cords in general, doing some of the just like binding off, picking up things that are just hard to do when you have a corded set. I would find myself making like another, what am I trying to say here? Like not a full circular needle, but just one needle tip attached to a cord just to have a free set of needles. And I was using my double points for things like that. I purchased a double point needle set in October when we were doing the Stephen West shawl. And I wanted a full double pointed needle set that was not only 6 inches, that's my preference, the 7 or 8 is too long, the 4 or the 5 is too small, but I also wanted them to all be the same. So I was so happy when somebody reached out to me and said that they would love to give me these, so thank you so much. They sent me this set of needles, which was really kind. I did not want them to send them to me. I wanted to pay for them, but they were very persistent, so I just thank you so much. They also sent me some really cute other tools and accessories and some stitch markers, which I've already broken up into my little collection back here. I'm actually using one of them right now for right here. It's a little dinosaur. It's so cute. It's a pink dinosaur and I love it so much. So thank you for sending me those. And I am on my way to having a really refined needles and hooks collection that I'm hoping to get into a portable sort of pack that I am minimal with. That's like my goal. Okay, I also bought a couple of things at the Knitting in the Hills retreat and while we were in the Austin, Texas area. So I got this yarn from Barker Wool, and this is one of the assigned pooling yarns. If you haven't seen assigned pooling, go check out my Knitting in the Hills retreat video because I show several samples of it, or go to Dawn Barker's Ravelry page. She has shawls and sweaters and maybe a couple other accessories that are knit or designed for assigned pooling. So it's really a really cool concept. Where this dark color is right here on the end, whenever you get to that little blip of color, you do a special stitch. And then you work and work and work, and then when you get to that color again, you do a special stitch. And it creates just this really cool, fun look. Sometimes it's almost like a bauble, sometimes it looks a little more lacy. It's fascinating. This color is called My Happy Place, and it was the show color for the Knitting in the Hills Retreat 2023, and it sold out by Saturday, I think. We got there on Thursday, and so I grabbed 2 skeins right away to have enough for a shawl. This is not going to be going into my stash. I am going to be reserving this for a special prize for the Love and Stitches membership, but I just knew that this would be something that was so special and fun and not available elsewhere. However, there are so many fun colors that are available, so definitely check out Barker Wool. I also bought some stitch markers. I got a whole lot more than this, but I've actually divided those up already, but I wanted to show these ones. So I got these at the Knitting Cup, which is that the one in Georgetown? It's outside of Austin, Texas, but they had this brand, A Needle Runs Through It. And I got all different kinds of wooden markers. These are so cute because they say, make one, knit through the back loop, like increase. There were others that had the make one right, make one left, and instructions on how to do it, which was really cute. So with sets like this, I always find that I only want a handful of the things on there because some are duplicates and I just don't always use duplicates. So I've already actually taken my other sets and I've broken them up into little, like put them into different prize packs that I'm already sending out. So I didn't keep all of them to show you, but I did want to show you that because they're super, super cute. All right, that's all I got. Let me talk about my classes really briefly. So somebody asked in the Knitting in the Hills retreat video why I didn't show classes. And the reason is that the classes are a private thing. There's something that at the retreat we've paid for to get access to, and also the teachers have worked really, really hard to create that content. And so I didn't even want to ask to film anything because I just feel like that would be an invasion of privacy and also just I don't know what the right word is, but like it would be like if somebody asked to take a picture of like part of a pattern and like share it publicly on the internet. Like this is intellectual content that somebody has worked really, really hard on, and I wanted to respect that. So I really didn't show the classes a lot. But what I realized is I also didn't talk about them a lot. So I am taking that feedback and I am hoping to share more about my classes in the future in the vlog content. So not actually filming in the class, but talking about it afterwards. I need to remember to do that. So I'm just gonna briefly talk about it here on the podcast today. Hope that's all right. So the first class I took was with Kate Oates. She is a sweater designer and it was called Tailoring 101. I really liked that they had all this stuff printed out for us. So we basically went through an amazing worksheet. She had one of her sweater patterns, a very simple one in here, and we took measurements in the class, and then we worked through different formulas on how to adjust things, how to adjust the bust, how to adjust the sleeves. She was the one, I believe, that gave me that tip, not me specifically, but the class, that tip about using your upper bust measurement. If there's a big difference between upper and full bust, maybe using the upper bust measurement to determine your sweater size, especially if your neckline is always very, very loose. So that was a really interesting class. Again, I'm just gonna briefly go through these. The next class that I took was embroidering knitwear with Caitlin Hunter. So in here are all different types of diagrams for different stitches. This class was very interactive. She would show one type of stitch, we would practice it, then show a different type of stitch and we would practice it. I really liked the format of this class because it allowed time to absorb the information and talk. It wasn't just a lecture. It was like a little bit of teaching, a little bit of personal work, a little bit of teaching, a little bit of personal, time to work and chat and everything. So I really enjoyed that one. And also I think sharing these is helpful because a lot of these teachers are full-time knitting teachers and designers. And so you'll see a version of this class at other events. And if you do see something that you like, you may want to take it. The last class I took was, well, that's not true. I took one other class, but it was more of a workshop kind of thing. But the last one that I want to talk about is a class with Dawn Barker called The Mighty Remnants. In this class, we went through how you can use your leftover yarns, which was so perfect for my goal this year of scrap-free 2023. So not only did she share with us a lot of patterns, she has a lot of patterns for using remnants, but how to actually take your remnants and divide them by color, how to look at them in black and white, how to like see which colors would go together, how to make sure you have enough for a pattern. It was really, really cool. We also talked about color theory. She took us around like the color wheel, which is something I didn't know a lot about, so that was really neat. And it was just really, really useful. And now I have this happy handout to help me in the future. So there you go. I am sorry that I didn't share more about that in the vlog, but I hope that that was interesting and you'll see more from my classes in the future. Let's get into the questions. So if you have a question for me, make sure to leave a comment down below, but put in the very beginning #question so I know to look out for it. I am trying to get to around 5 questions every single week. And if I don't answer your question, you can also just ask it again in the next podcast. And I'm trying to keep an eye on like which things are being asked most and try to answer and help as many people as possible. Okay, so here we go for question number 1. This is from Handmade Schwan. I am curious, how long does it take you to film a podcast episode in general? It's amazing how much work and effort you put into them. Oh, thank you so much. So we have definitely been putting a lot more work into the podcast in the last, I would say, sorry, my chair is bothering me, in the last like at least 8 months or so, I've been doing a lot more planning. So this isn't always how long it took me to do the podcast, but now it's also divided up between myself and my husband, Kent, who edits all of my videos. So I'm able to take more time to really plan the podcast and think about what I want to put into it. So I talked with Kent and we kind of broke down in general how long it takes each of us to work on different segments of the podcast. So first of all, I do spend a lot of time planning the podcast. It usually takes me about an hour, sometimes a little bit longer, to create all of my notes. So I have a template that I use that I'm actually looking at right now. You can make this for yourself if you want like things you talk about each section that we have. So I take a lot of time thinking about what specifically I want to share about my projects. I go through the questions that you all have asked and think of my answers to them. I think about what's gone on in the last week and what I want to share in my life segment, just things like that. And then this is also where I go through my phone, my camera roll, and I upload any pictures I want to be included. I have that all planned out ahead of time, so it does take me, I would say, about an hour. Then I guess I'll wait till the end. I'll kind of share like our schedule for that. The next element is actually filming the podcast. It usually takes me around 2 hours to film a podcast, including getting everything set up and filming it and then breaking everything back down. So the setup part of this is that I'm in the bedroom right now, so we have to do a little furniture rearranging every week. Normally, behind the camera, there is a big chair in the corner of the bedroom, so we actually move that out of the way so I have space for you, the camera, and the tripod, which I need to get out and set up. Then I'm sitting in my desk chair, which Kent carries from the living room where my desk is, into here so that I have a space to sit during the podcast. I was going to use the big chair that normally sits in the corner of the bedroom, but it doesn't actually fit in this little area between the air conditioning and the bed. So the setup probably takes a little longer than it may for you, but I have to get everything out here. And then I also pull out all my projects and set them on the bed. I have a little table here for my computer. I like put on the candle, you know, all of that stuff. So in total, to set it up, to film it, and to break it down is probably about 2 hours. Then I asked Kent, how long does it take to edit? And he said it depends, of course, on the length, but usually it takes him twice as long to edit as the length of the footage. So if the podcast that I film is 1 hour long, it takes him about 2 hours to edit it. So that's usually how my podcasts are. I know they've been longer lately, but I would say about 2 hours for editing, putting in all the pictures, cutting things up, and then it takes longer to actually do the parts where you're not hands-on, like exporting and uploading. So when you export it, it's just taking everything that you've chopped up and then like basically making the file that's the final version that gets uploaded to YouTube. And then it takes you know, a couple hours to get it onto YouTube. So all of that stuff I'm not including because it's not really hands-on time, but that's in here too. And then the last bit of it is actually just finalizing things on YouTube. That's where I take back over again. And that usually takes me around 15 to 20 minutes because I have kind of a system with that. I try to use, you know, the week before, anything that's in the description box, I copy that over and then I just edit and change things. We've actually started moving this where Kent is doing more of this and I just kind of do the final check. Making the thumbnail, that's the same every week, so that doesn't take a lot of time. So yeah, all of that, probably 15, 20 minutes. So an hour to plan, 2 hours to film, 2 hours to film, 2 hours to edit, and then another like 15 minutes to get it all on YouTube. Give or take, I would say it's anywhere from 5 to 6 hours each week for the podcast. So hopefully that was interesting to like get a little background. The way we do it is I usually plan the podcast on Mondays. So I spend an hour on Mondays planning. I film it on Tuesdays, which is today, so a couple of hours to plan. Kent usually edits it over 2 days, so he usually does a little bit on Tuesday, getting it all onto his computer, finalizes it on Wednesdays, and then on Thursdays is when it actually goes up and I do those final checks on YouTube before it actually posts. So there you go. That's a little behind the scenes of the podcast. The podcast is the quickest thing for us every single week, so just keep in mind that other videos, even if they're shorter, they actually take a lot longer to film. Okay, let's look at question number 2. This question is from Kara. I love the idea of blocking mid-project to be sure things are fitting. I am doing a colorwork yoke on a fingering weight sweater right now and was thinking about blocking after the yoke is done like you did with the Alpenglow. I was wondering if when you are totally done with the project, if you wet block only the half that did not get blocked previously, or if you wet block the entire project like you normally would with wet blocking. I didn't know if wet blocking twice would stretch it out more or make no difference at all. Thanks, good luck with color matching on your sweater. Remember, if it isn't as close as you like, but still usable, you can always helical knit to blend the two. Okay, I realize that your name could also be pronounced Kara, so forgive me. I'm just gonna use Kara right now, but you're right. I could helical knit them together, and that's what I did, so thank you for the encouragement on my sweater. So let's talk about wet blocking mid-project. I have just done this with my Citrine Light. It's not a colorwork yoke, but you're right, I did do this with the Alpenglow in September, which is a circular colorwork yoke sweater, similar to what you are knitting. So I would definitely recommend blocking after you finish the yoke, giving it a try on. That's when I realized that I needed to add more length to my yoke before dividing for the underarm. So it was absolutely essential for fit for me on that. So when you're totally done with the project, I would just completely block the whole thing again. One, I think it would be really difficult to only submerge half of a project anyway. I don't really see that being like possible. But two, I think it's actually great to give that yoke a second block. So think about when you're wearing things. If you're wearing a sweater or sock or whatever it is, it tends to ease out and stretch like as you wear it. I sometimes find that the second time I wash an item, because I've been wearing it, it actually looks even better than the first time that I blocked it. It also might have a little more give the second time that you block it and be more aligned to what it's gonna be like when you wear it and it gets that extra little set of like ease out. So I think especially in a yoke, it's actually nicer to have a double block where you've blocked it once and then blocked it again. I think it's gonna actually fit you even better. It's gonna ease out even more and look even smoother. You also definitely want to submerge the whole thing in water again, because like I showed on my Citrine Light, when I pulled it out, I'll get it again, just in case you've divided the episode in half and you're like, I don't remember from the beginning. When I started working, again, there's a definite line of where it's blocked and not blocked. So if I don't submerge the whole thing in water, that's not gonna get to like even out and work in together. So I would just say reblock the entire thing, and that it's going to actually benefit that yoke to be blocked twice. Next question is from U Creek Cottage. Natalie, what is a yarn cozy and what is it used for? I'm looking forward to the knit along. I learned so much from you. Thank you for always sharing your experience. Thank you so much for asking this question. So what is a yarn cozy? Shouldn't have set that down. I'm going to show this again. Okay, so a yarn cozy, and these are my patterns, but I'm not the only one who writes these patterns. I didn't come up with this concept or anything, so don't think that, but I, of course, want to show you my pattern because I think it works really, really well, and I'm very proud of it. So a yarn cozy. It is, well, I'll show this one first. It is a little sleeve, basically, that you can put on a cake of yarn. So something that is wound into a cake and that you're going to pull from the center. This is important because these really aren't made for any other configurations of winding. If you wind something by hand into a ball, you really don't need it, like into a ball. If you do a center pull, you might be able to use this. If you have a yarn that you bought and it's already pre-wound into kind of that football shape, you don't need this. It's also not going to fit. So these are really just for cakes of yarn. So you buy a skein of yarn in the yarn store and they wind it up for you, or you wind it at home into a cake, you will benefit from using one of these. Again, if you pull from the center. So when you are knitting or crocheting, I use these for crochet too, and you continuously pull from the center, your cake of yarn starts to deflate and it starts to kind of lose its shape and integrity, and it doesn't stay together. And the friction of putting it in and out of your project bag and just being in your project bag, it starts to fall apart. So what this does is it not only protects it from like getting bumped as much, like when it bumps, it doesn't actually like move the individual strands of yarn. It will hold on, it will kind of, because it's a knitted fabric, and I also have crochet versions too, it will kind of start to shrink as the ball of yarn shrinks, and it will hold on to your yarn until the very, very end. So I didn't save anything that I'm almost done with to show you this, but surprisingly, these work so, so well. I'm still surprised by it, but you can get to where you just have like that outer ring and it's still staying inside of here. Sometimes you have to push it back in a little bit, but they help a ton. Are they essential to knitting and crochet? Of course not. You really only need the yarn and the hook or the needle, but I do really love having them, and I like that they're a small project that are great for using up leftovers, and especially yarns that you don't want to just put into another project where it's not going to shine. You can use a singular little bit of yarn. I think this takes 20 to 30 grams and really show it off. So I love that. I brought over a couple of different versions to show. I have the knitted ones that are for 100 grams of fingering weight yarn. They've also fit DK for me. I wouldn't say it will fit anything bigger than that. There is a crochet version, also for 100 grams, and a ribbed crochet version. And then this is the 50 gram knitted one. And I have recently tested out adding 1/2 inch to the body of this, and it's working so much better. So I'm going to be updating the pattern soon, but just in case you are already working on these 50 gram ones, I would suggest just adding an extra 1/2 inch in length on them. And then I have one more version, these tiny little 20 gram ones. So I do plan to add to the family and add more versions in both sizes and thicknesses of yarn, because I've had some people say, I don't work with fingering weight, what about something a little bit bigger? And I think we're going to be doing a cozy make-along knitting and crochet in May. So tentatively, make that part of your knitting crochet schedule. I need to get all the details planned out. I want to get at least one more version of these patterns ready. And also, if you're interested in testing, please don't reach out yet because I'm not ready for it, but be looking out on Instagram and YouTube because I will need tests of all of the new versions that I want to create. All right, moving on, question number 4. This is from the Yarn Niffler. That's a cute name. Oh, this is another cozy question, which is why I wanted to answer this one next. I have been making yarn cozies following your pattern, but my I-cord bind off is very tight. I already went up from a 2.25 millimeter needle to a 2.75 millimeter needle. Do you have any other suggestions or ideas? Great question. So at the top of both versions, knit and crochet, there is an I-cord bind off. In the knit version, I have suggested something that I made up. Maybe I didn't make this up. Maybe I found it somewhere, but I call it the stretchy I-cord bind off. It's similar to other I-cord bind offs, but it has an extra yarn over in it. The yarn over is supposed to create a little extra give, a little extra stretch, because we do want the yarn cozy to come in around our yarn, but we want to be able to get the yarn cozy or the yarn in there in the first place. So I suggest this kind of I-cord bind off where you do that extra yarn over, the yarn over goes over with the stitch, and then the yarn over expands and stretches that stitch out. At least that's what it's supposed to do. That's what it does for me. But I've learned that that actually doesn't work for everybody. For some people, it's actually tighter than just a regular I-cord bind off. So what you've already done going up a needle size is one way to get a little bit more give on the I-cord. You may need to do that anyway, but I would also suggest just taking out that yarn over step. So don't do the yarn over, still use your larger needle size and do everything else the same. So instead of taking the yarn over and the slip stitch over, just take the slip stitch over. There will be no yarn over there. That should help loosen things up a little bit. Again, everyone's a little different in how they knit it, but some people have said that that has helped them make it a little bit less tight. Question number 5. This is actually 2 different questions because they were both about swatching, so I figured that might be something that would be valuable to talk about. This one is from Laughing Lioness. You mentioned new perspectives on sweater swatching, and I'm intrigued. I think my history of not swatching is in part due to the abundant advice to swatch, but not much information on what that actually looks like. Would you share your ideas on swatching and how that has changed? I struggle with all the questions related to swatching, like do I do 2 swatches if a project is flat and in the round? What is a good size? Do I put borders on a stockinette swatch or leave it to see how the edges block? Will I still have enough yarn if I make a big swatch? And if not, can I frog the swatch and still use it in a project? I would so love to know your thoughts on the goals and ways to execute a beneficial swatch. And then let me just read the other one real quickly and I'll answer them both together. This one is from Atkinson. Hey Natalie, why would you cut the yarn on swatches when you can just measure your gauge and rip it out to save the yarn? Is there something I don't know about swatches? And then the rest of it is about Tunisian crochet. So I did read it, but it's not part of the question. So thank you for your advice on the Tunisian crochet piece. Okay, so swatching. Hold on, I need to pull this question up again because I want to make sure I answer everything from both questions. So I have kind of changed my swatching understanding in the last few months. Hold on. So I honestly haven't been able to put this fully into practice yet because I haven't started any new projects, but when I start all of the lights, I am going to be doing this. So this is what my swatches have looked like in the past. This is my swatch for the Citrine Light. This is not a grade A swatch because one, it's not big enough to actually get something accurate, but I really didn't think I was going to have enough yarn. And so I think we'll start there. To swatch, I personally feel like it's nice to have a little bit of extra yarn. I did already say that I ordered an extra skein of yarn, like 1 more skein than suggested for my size, for my All of the Lights sweater. This extra skein of yarn means I can swatch as big as I want, as many times as I want. And I also have extra yarn in case my sweater, for some reason, needs more yarn. I've heard that a lot of pattern designers will put in a buffer into their pattern, like a buffer amount of yarn, usually somewhere around 5 to 10% extra. but I wouldn't rely on that as a rule because there is not a pattern design school for knitwear. There is not a standard that's telling all of these independent designers exactly what they have to put into their patterns. So while I think you can trust a lot of designers to do this, I wouldn't rely on it completely. Also, I think that not every size is going to have the same amount of extra yarn, because designers, I would think, are going to also be thinking of you and how much money you want to spend on yarn. And if you need like 7.8 skeins, they're going to say get 8 skeins instead of get 9 skeins, right? Because you don't want to have one whole extra skein of yarn necessarily. I don't know. I wouldn't rely on that in total because there's not a hard and fast rule. You can swatch, and I would recommend this completely. Whenever you swatch, I wouldn't immediately take it out because I like to use my swatch throughout my project, because sometimes I'll go back and look and say like, what was my row gauge again? Let me just measure that again. Let me see if it's like looking the same. I don't know. I just like to have the swatch throughout the project. Plus your swatch yarn is going to be kinked up and ramen-y, and so it might not be the best yarn to use, but I do save it in case I need it at the end. So swatching in a way that you can reuse the yarn, I think, is important, but I don't rip it out immediately. So let's talk about, so having enough yarn is the first part of swatching, I think. So either getting extra yarn or just swatching in a way that you know you can use that yarn later on at the end. And then I would err on the side of caution in designers putting in like some amount of buffer and just saving your swatch till the end if you need it. So when you're actually swatching, a good swatch is going to be quite large. You want to be able to measure over 4 inches. And this is the new bit of information that really made sense to me when it was explained. It was either, maybe it was in my Tailoring 101 class or something that I took at Vogue. I've taken a lot of knitting classes lately, so it's been helpful. But the thing I heard over and over from these teachers was that you want to be able to measure over 4 inches. Okay, that's not new information to me. 4 inches, I mean, this isn't 4 inches. But the thing that really stood out to me was that you want to be able to measure over 4 inches in the middle of your swatch. So if you want to measure over 4 inches in the middle of your swatch, you need your swatch to be larger than that. The reason that you don't want to measure the edge of a swatch is because edge stitches do not behave the same as the stitches in the center. So if you're including edge stitches into your swatch total, you're not going to get an accurate measurement of what your larger project is going to look like. 4 inches here is not the same, if this was the same yarn, as 4 inches end to end on a finished piece. It's just not the same. So you really probably want to make a swatch that's about 6 by 6 inches. And the easy way to do that is to go into your pattern. It should give you a gauge over 4 inches. And then you can see, okay, it's 6 stitches per inch. So I need to add an extra 2 inches. So an extra 6 stitches is 1 more inch. An extra 12 stitches is 2 more inches. So just add on those number of stitches, cast that on, and you should be good to go. And then of course, knit it long enough. So the other thing that stood out to me about that was there's a reason that the gauge is given over 4 inches. And what I've always done is just divided that in half and measured over 2 inches. And been like, okay, if I measure, 8 stitches over 2 inches, that's the same as 16 stitches over 4 inches. But that might not be true. So one of the teachers that I had lately said, if you measure over 4 inches, that gives you the biggest, I don't know if they said margin of error, but the biggest field test basically of how accurate this really is. If I'm measuring 1 inch and I'm like, oh, it's 6 inches, maybe 6 1/3, I don't know. Well, let's just call it 6. That's not very accurate. But if I measure over 4 inches and I'm like, oh, it's 23. Okay, well, 23 divided by 4 is 6.25 or something, right? I couldn't have gotten that by just measuring 1 inch. So being able to actually measure 4 inches in the middle is very, very important. Is this making sense? I feel like I need to make a video just about swatching now, so I can really go into all the things that I want. Okay, I don't want to take so much longer on this. Actually, hold on. In fact, I was taking so long that I needed to restart my camera before it cut off on me. Okay, so not going to take too long on this. If you want to see a full video about just swatching, let me know, and maybe I'll do that with my All of the Lights cardigan, because it does seem like we have a lot of questions and I don't have all the answers, but I will share with you everything that I know. So the other thing about swatching is you want to do it with the same needles as close as possible to the same way you're going to be doing the final item. So if your sweater is knit in the round, you want to swatch in the round. That's what this swatch is. It's like a fakey knit in the round swatch where you knit and then you slide back across so you can knit again, slide back across. I used to always cut these, and I didn't cut this because, again, I was worried about running out of yarn, but I probably didn't leave myself enough slack here in order to really let this lay flat and measure, and obviously this swatch isn't big enough. So from Kate Oates, when I took the tailoring class, she suggested that when you do a fakey swatch in the round like this, you leave like big, long loops so that you can have plenty of slack to lay your swatch out really, really flat. And you don't have to cut this, because once you cut, which I know is in the second question, you can't reuse this in the same way. Sure, you could pull out and have like a little strip of yarn if you really needed it, but it's not going to be a continuous piece of yarn if you need it for your emergency, like last bit of your yarn here. So if you leave nice long loops, you're gonna use more yarn, but you're gonna be able to reuse the yarn. So I'm planning to do that from now on. And then I think there was a question about if it's knit flat and in the round, do you need to do 2 swatches? And I would say that yes, that's gonna be the most accurate way to do it, especially I think if you're a continental knitter, because when you purl, your gauge is more likely to be different than when you knit as a continental knitter. At least that's just what I've seen to be true. For me, I have noticed that my gauge doesn't change as much between knitting in the round and knitting flat. But if it's a really big change, then you're gonna want to know that. And there's some things you can do. You could set up your interchangeable needles so that on the flat pieces, you have one needle to knit and a smaller needle to purl. Usually it's purl stitches are bigger, and you could know that for your flat pieces and then switch back to the same needle tips for knitting in the round. The other thing that I know people find a lot is that when they knit in a small circumference, like on a sleeve, their gauge changes too. So I would say that doing this once for yourself, maybe just taking some yarn that you're not using, doing a swatch in the round, same needles, do a swatch flat, same needles, do a swatch on like magic loop, and see what the difference is. And then you can kind of just know for, in general, when you make other patterns, okay, when I knit in the round and then I switch to flat, I need to switch up my needle size. Or when I knit a sweater body in the round and then I switch to magic loop for the sleeves, I need to go up a needle size. You can just have that in general for yourself. Because yes, the most accurate way would be every time you start a new sweater, you swatch all the different ways you're going to be knitting, but most of us aren't going to do that. So I think maybe a one-time test would be good to figure that out. Okay, what else have I not said? Oh, you definitely need to block your swatch. So you need to fully submerge it in water for at least 20 minutes. Water and soap is what I usually do. And then I use that water and soap to wash something that's dirty so that I don't feel like it was a waste for the swatch. And then lay it out flat to dry. Don't pin it, because pinning it is going to stretch it. You want it to behave as close to what you're going to be making as possible. Okay. Oh, the question about putting borders on it. I would say that's up to you. I don't really like to put borders on mine. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is putting like a garter border on the bottom, but then just doing stockinette for the rest, just so it lays a little flatter. Just remember that anytime you're doing anything different, you don't want to be measuring gauge close to something that's different from your actual stitch. So if you have garter stitch borders on the side, you're going to have to come in at least an inch from the garter stitch border before you can accurately get a measure on your stockinette. So maybe consider not doing that, just because you might just need, if you want to do that, I would say add even a little extra, like add 3 extra stitches on each side in addition to the 6 inches in the middle, just so you have plenty of buffer if you just like your swatches to look really nice and like lay really flat and everything. They honestly, if they're big enough, they'll be able to do that anyway. Okay. Yes, you can frog your swatch afterwards if you have a continuous piece of yarn, but save it for the end. Did I get to all of these questions? I hope so. So the question from Atkinson about why would you cut the yarn when you can just rip it out is because I used to make, and used to, I haven't really changed from this yet, but I was used to making swatches this small. So then I would cut, and that way I could flatten it out totally and get a more accurate measure on gauge. Like I said, now I'm going to leave longer loops so I can still stretch it out flat, but then use the yarn if I need it. Okay, I feel like that's enough on this one. Okay, we're gonna end with a really lighthearted question because this one made both Kent and I laugh when we saw it. It's just a really random question. This is from Sarah. Sorry, but this has been bugging me. Why are your pillowcases so much bigger than your pillows? No good answer here, really. So yeah, I guess you're talking about this one right here. Yeah, this one? I would say, my guess is that when we used to have a king size bed, those pillowcases belonged to that king size set. And then we moved here and we like sold all of our pillows. We probably tossed our pillows because pillows get so gross, but we sold all of that, but I kept a lot of the sheet sets so that I could have extra pillowcases. And then we got new sheet sets for our queen size bed, new pillows for our queen size bed, but they're still king size pillowcases. So yeah, they're just bigger. And you know what? I actually am going to defend myself here and say that I like it because I don't like to see the edge of the pillow. It's all like lumpy and gross. We probably need new pillows. And I know they make those pillowcases that are like, have the little extra fabric thing, little like envelope thing. But yeah, no good reason. They just are. And I'm sorry that it bothers you, but maybe now having the answer will make you feel a little bit better. I woke up in the middle of the night last night and realized that I had not recorded the news segment for this podcast. So you are getting early morning Natalie, before coffee, before food. So just bear with me here. I do want to share this segment because I have important things to share that are coming up. So I'm recording this right before I go to the airport. So the sun is rising outside. I thought that would be a really cool background. All right, so first of all, this past week's video was a vlog from Austin, Texas. So before we went to the retreat in Austin, Texas, we spent a few days, and I say we, it was me, Kent, my friend Amy, and her husband Ian. We went down early and we spent Monday to Wednesday in Austin just exploring around the town. We stayed downtown, we got food, we got drinks, and then we also went to 4 yarn stores, which are all included in the vlog. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's short and sweet. I think it's like 16 minutes long, but it's jam-packed full of lots of yarny goodness. So go check that out. I will link it down below. Coming up next week, I am going to be talking about planning my spring knits. So you know how I kept talking about I had that big day where I planned a lot of stuff? Well, I had that day, and then I had an additional day on the weekend where I really looked at like everything beyond March and kind of thought, what things do I want to be working on and having on my list to knit and all of that like coming up. What things do I still have in stash and leftovers that I want to be using, especially for Scrap Free 2023? And then I make a plan and I show you exactly how I do that with my notebook and everything. So that one's coming up next week. So make sure to be looking for it. Okay, so here's the thing that I didn't want to miss. The Knit for Food Knit-a-thon is coming up on Sunday, March 26th. When I shared it last week, I didn't have as much info and details as I do now. I had just created my donation page. So now I know a little bit more about what is going on. So the Knit for Food Knit-a-thon is put on by designer Laura Nelkin. It is a fundraiser for 4 different organizations. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but I know one of them is Meals on Wheels. It's 4 different organizations that provide food for the hungry. So it is a really, really great cause. And the way that it works is you commit to knitting or crocheting for 12 hours on Sunday, March 26th. And of course, like, do with that what you will, but that's the a-thon part of it. And then other people can sponsor you by leaving donations on your page, and all of that money gets divided in between those 4 different charities. So I've created a Team Love and Stitches. So if you would like to donate to Team Love and Stitches, you can find the link down below. Any amount works. And I am going to be committing to the 12-hour day on Sunday, March 26th. So there's going to be some fun things going on then. I realized that if you want to participate in the Zooms put on by Knit for Food, you do have to fundraise $100 individually. So that was something that I wasn't clear on last time when I was sharing the things, but I am going to have some things going on that day because I think it will be very fun. So for the Love and Stitches community as a whole, I'm going to have an Instagram live on Sunday, March 26th. I don't know what time yet because I am going to wait until the schedule comes out from Knit for Food for that day. And then for Love and Stitches members, we're going to have a Zoom at some point on that day. Again, schedule TBD. And also for Love and Stitches members, because we've been reading Pride and Prejudice this month, we're going to watch Pride and Prejudice. So it's going to be really fun. And then for all donees that donate under Love and Stitches, you're going to be entered to win a knitted yarn cozy. Maybe I'll make a crochet one too, but that's going to be my project for that day. When I am working on stuff for 12 hours, I'm going to be working on, I think, 2 yarn cozies. I think I can get 2 done. So those 2 yarn cozies that I make on that day during the knit-a-thon, I will then randomly draw from the donors under the Love and Stitches page, and 1 or 2 of you will get a handmade yarn cozy from me as a thank you. So it's going to be really, really fun, but definitely check it out. Even if you can't participate in any capacity, just sharing about the knit-a-thon is very helpful. So you can find that, and then you can find like the share link and everything. Last thing is that the Love and Stitches membership is opening on April 4th. So it will be open for 4 days. You can find the details on the info page, and I will be updating it as I have new details. We are looking at making just a couple of small changes to the next quarter, so be on the lookout for that. If you're definitely interested in joining the Love and Stitches membership, I highly recommend that you sign up for the email list down below. The email list is going to give you even more info than is on the info page, because I'm going to send out a series of emails ahead of when the membership opens. You'll also get access to a special temporary Discord, which Discord is a big part of our membership. So this Discord will be a great way for you to get already set up and ready for the membership. You'll also get a sneak peek at one of the events that we did this quarter. You'll get to watch the whole thing. So even if you're just curious about that, sign up for the membership emails down below. Okay, I think that's it. I need to go grab my coffee and head off to the airport, and I will send you back to present day Natalie. This last week has been a really fun week. We've gotten to do a lot of really cool things. So last Wednesday, we went to see Sweeney Todd on Broadway. I took a little picture of my knitting. I was working on my Musselburgh hat. And this was exciting because this is the first time we've seen a Broadway show in previews. So I didn't know this until I moved here, but there are preview shows before the show officially debuts has opening night, all of that. And it's like 3 weeks and the tickets are cheaper, which is great. So we've had these tickets to go see Sweeney Todd for months. We got them in 2022 and we picked this time because it was right around my birthday. So it was kind of a birthday activity. And what was interesting about it is that there were 2 people sitting right in front of us. We were like up really high. There were 2 people sitting in front of us working on the show. They had a laptop and an iPad and they were actually making changes to the lighting. It wasn't affecting what we were seeing on the stage, but what I assumed is that they were making notes of things they wanted to change for like the next rehearsal or the next night or whatever. So that was really, really cool. Other than that, I mean, it looked like a finished show to me. It was really, really great. Only one not great thing happened that night, and the woman next to me was not a fan of my knitting. So I have knit at many Broadway shows. I would say since we started going to shows in the summer, I've probably been to 10 shows and I've knitted during every single one, and I've never had anyone say anything to me and I've never felt self-conscious about it, but this person made me feel so self-conscious about my knitting. So I knitted all during the first act. I always make sure that my arms are like down in my lap, like they're not like up here or anything. I am not rustling around or anything. And so during the intermission, this woman turns to me and she was like, I wasn't even knitting. I had it in my lap. It was just sitting in my lap because I usually take a break during intermission for my arms. And she was like, oh, I wondered what that was. And I'm probably making it sound a lot worse. It probably didn't sound like that. I was just, again, very self-conscious about it. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'm knitting, like I'm sorry if it was bothering you. And she was like, I thought you were ripping paper. And I was like, wait a second, what? Ripping paper? And then I remembered that one time during that I had wanted to spit out my gum. So I like pulled out a receipt and like ripped it and like put my gum in the receipt. And so I wasn't like ripping and ripping and ripping and ripping. It was just one time. And so I turned to Kent and I was like, okay, help me out here. Like, what's your opinion? What are your thoughts? And he was like, well, when you ripped the paper, it was loud. I'm like, okay, fair. And I'm like, but my knitting? And he's like, I don't know. I can't hear it. He's like, just knit during the loud parts. And so I tried my best to knit when there were songs on, but it was like, because that person had mentioned it, I couldn't get it out of my head. And I could like feel or hear like that little like plink, like when the yarn like snaps through the needles and it makes that sound. Like I think when I'm knitting, it doesn't make a sound when I go into the stitch, but when I pull the yarn, it's like goes snick. It kind of does make a sound, but like I had never even noticed it. And of course I didn't notice it because I'm hearing it all the time, but I never noticed it. No one's ever noticed it. And so I just decided to stop knitting. I felt like I was kind of annoyed, but I also just felt really self-conscious, and I just couldn't get a grip on like, was I being too selfish, or was this just like silly and I really didn't need to worry about it? Maybe just don't knit because it's bothering somebody, but in the future it will be okay. And so after the show, I asked Kent, actually the girl after the show, like just like got up and left like during the applause, which is not something that you do, I think, to me at least. Like, I don't know her story. Maybe she worked for the show too. I don't know. But I feel like you should stay and applaud during the entire bowing and all of that, right? And so she got up and left, and Kent was like, man, she's like not, was she like mad about your knitting? And I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, I don't know. And so he told me that he couldn't hear my knitting the entire time. He was trying to hear it, and he said he didn't hear it. So anyway, it's just, I usually have no issues knitting in public, and I'm gonna still call this like a non-issue because it was a one-time circumstance to me. And I feel confident about going to other shows and knitting and it not being a problem. But now I'm going to be mentally prepared if somebody does mention it, that it's bothering them, to be okay with not doing it then. Okay, that was just Wednesday. No, okay, so Thursday was my birthday this past week, and the way I really wanted to spend the day was just to not have any plans, not have any obligations, like not wear makeup, wear pajamas, work on my knitting. And that's pretty much what I got to do, and it was great. So I had a massage. That was my only thing out of the house in the morning, which was lovely. And then I actually spent a lot of time tidying up because we had just gotten back from our trip to Austin, and I hadn't had the chance to pull all of my knitting things and things that I had gotten from Austin, from the Knitting in the Hills retreat. I hadn't been able to sort through all of that. So I actually spend most of the day here in the bedroom, like organizing things and unpacking and cleaning. And then that gave me the motivation to start working on my projects. So that was the day that I really went through my Fangirl Fibers yarn and planned out the blanket, which was really, really fun. And I just had a great time doing that, and giving myself the space to do that on my birthday was really fun. I wanted to cast on because I wanted a birthday cast on, but I ultimately decided I wasn't ready to start the blanket yet, but I still got all of the joy and fun of getting it all rearranged and everything. And then Kent made me a key lime pie for my birthday, which is my favorite dessert. And it was delicious, and I ate it every day until last night, and it's gone now, so I'm sad. But he said he can make more of it. On Friday night is when we celebrated my birthday with a couple of friends. I really didn't want to do anything, but they suggested just like going to dinner. So we picked a place that was one of our favorite Italian restaurants, and it was kind of small. So we just had a couple friends come. We went to dinner. I had my favorite gnocchi, which was so good. And then one of the friends made me key lime cupcakes. And I'm not a cupcake person. I would say in general, I don't really care for cupcakes, but these were so good because of course they were key lime flavored. The batter was really, really like dense and smooth, and it was cream cheese icing. So they were super good, and I really was happy and appreciated that. And then on Saturday, we went to a hockey game. It was not any team that we were cheering for or anything, but Kent has a friend who lives on Long Island, and so we went out to Long Island to watch the Islanders play the Washington Capitals, which was his friend's team, and I knitted on my Musselburgh during that. I had no worries about knitting in a hockey game because you definitely cannot hear any of the needles. It's not quiet at any moment, so that was no problem, and I did a lot of knitting during that game. It was great. I got almost to the ribbing. And it's also a long train ride out to Long Island. It's about an hour, maybe 40 minutes. And so I did a lot of knitting on the train as well, which was great. On Sunday, I got to meet up with my friend Charles, who lives here in New York City. And he's a knitter and a professional dancer, which is really cool. So he was like, I want to meet up. We've been wanting to meet up and like just have like a knitting date. But his schedule is so busy and I've been out of town a lot. And so he was like, well, what about Sunday? I'm like, okay, Sunday. So we just like made our plans really fast. And it's always nice when that works out, because sometimes I'll have things planned for months and sometimes I have things planned last minute. And that seems to be the only two options that ever work, right? Really planning in advance or like last minute plans. If you ask me like 3 days in advance, I don't know if it's gonna happen. Or like a week ahead, probably not. So we went to a coffee shop right up by Central Park. It was super cute. They had all these little areas with couches and tables, and we were able to snag a couch and sit and knit. I had a quiche, which was actually pretty good. It was called Serafina, Cafe Serafina. Serafina is like a local chain, I think. I've never actually been there, and it's a little bit pricey, but the cafe was not so bad. I mean, it was like cafe prices, like a $7 latte and stuff like that, but that's kind of par for the course. I think for a lot of areas now in cities, that's pretty much what things cost. So it was a really fun little knitting date, and I had a great time. And then Sunday night, Kent and I wanted to watch the Oscars. We were grocery shopping, and both of us were like, for some reason we were in the frozen food aisle and we saw the mozzarella sticks. And we've been wanting to do this nostalgia like food night where we have pizza rolls and bagel bites and dinosaur chicken nuggets and stuff like that. And so we thought, you know what, won't it be fun if we just do that tonight for the Oscars? So that's what we did. We had a little nostalgia food plate. We added some vegetables because we knew we needed to at least have a little bit of something green. But we made macaroni and cheese, pizza rolls, bagel bites. We couldn't find the dinosaur chicken nuggets, so we just had regular chicken nuggets. And then Kent had some fish sticks too. But it was really fun. I think we just needed some like desserts for that, like some cosmic brownies, and I love those smiley face potatoes. Those are so good. But we really had fun with that, and we watched the Oscars, and it was amazing. Okay, so I have finished reading The Chemistry of Love by Sariah Wilson. I did enjoy the book, and I was about to share that I feel kind of bad about how last week I talked about it being just not quite like the writing just leaves a little bit to be desired, because in the middle it was actually really great. It was still like simple, easy read, but not in the way that was just like so cheesy I just couldn't stand it. I was ready to share that on the podcast, but then last night I finished the book and it was so cheesy at the end. It was cute and predictable and great, and I actually really liked the storyline, but it was just, I don't know if I'll read any more of Sariah Wilson's books just because of that. I don't know, y'all can tell me if you've read that one and other ones, but it was just a little too much cheese for me. It was a romance. It was, I would say, like PG. It was not very steamy, maybe PG-13, but it was good. It was cute. I enjoyed the book. Again, not sure if I will continue. Like, I didn't leave me with the desire to want to read more books of the same exact style, but it was a really good buffer after all of the serious books I've been reading. So I did enjoy reading it. I have started just this morning A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah Maas. I think I looked up her name, and I think that's how you say her last name, but I have seen so many people, especially in the knitting world, reading A Court of Thorn and Roses, which is a lot of times written as ACOTAR, and I am excited to read it. When I shared that I was reading it on Instagram this morning, I got a lot of messages from people saying that it's one of their favorite series and that I will enjoy it so much, so I will share more as I read it, but I'm hoping that I really, really like it because there are 5 books, and it would be great to be able to read like a series again that I'm just really excited about. That hasn't happened to me, I guess, since Bridgerton. I think last year was my year of Bridgerton. The year before that I was reading the Knitting Murder Mystery series, or maybe I was reading both of those last year. I don't know. But I love getting into a series and just really loving it because I don't have to think about what to read next. And I'm just into that writer's style and world, and it's just a lot of fun. This week we watched the Oscars. I've been watching The Bachelor, of course. We've also started watching the new season of Jetlagged the Game, which is a YouTube channel where these guys, they're so funny, they will make a challenge that involves traveling around an area of the world. One time they circumnavigated the globe, which was really fun. They've played Connect 4 with the states, so they were literally like traveling to different states and playing Connect 4. What are they doing this time? Oh, they're kind of doing like a board game this time where they're in New Zealand, they're starting at the same point as 2 teams, and they are driving down these like diverging and converging highways, and in order to like go through the different spots they have to complete challenges. So I would highly recommend this YouTube channel. It's called Jetlagged the Game, or Jetlag the Game, I think, not Jetlagged. And there's a bunch of series already out, and Kent and I love watching these at lunchtime. 1 episode comes out every week, and so we just so look forward to those. We did try to watch the Murdaugh trials on Netflix, and we watched the first episode, and it made me feel like so anxious that I don't think I'm going to be able to continue, but I know that's been a very high topic everywhere lately, but I just don't think I can do it. My parents told me to watch it. I've had friends tell me to watch it. I've had, where was I the other day? I was somewhere like in public and people were talking about the trial because the verdict had just been read, and I was like, okay, yeah, I want to like understand what's going on. I couldn't do it. It made me feel so anxious. So I don't think I can watch that. All right, let's wrap up here with intention. So I have 3 intentions for March: a personal, a business, and a yarny goal. So my personal goal is to teach myself to do makeup this month. So I really haven't made any headway on this. I really haven't decided how I'm going to measure this either. So I really need to get on that, or it's going to kind of just, the end of the month is going to come up and I won't have really made any practical progress forward. But several of you have already reached out with some really helpful advice. So I just want to say thank you so much. Somebody sent me like a diagram for eyeshadows. Somebody sent me a bunch of tips about like just different people to watch or makeup lines to try. And so I need to sit down and like figure out what's going to be best for me. But interestingly enough, some makeup has landed in my lap. It's like sometimes you think about it and it comes to you. So my two friends that we went to my birthday dinner with, one of them is named Natalie, which is very funny. And the other one works at a designer company and they make makeup. So he actually had all these makeup samples and he got in the car and he's like, I have all these makeup samples that I got for that I want to see if Natalie wants them. And he was saying this to Kent, my husband Kent, and I was like, oh my gosh, how did you know? Like, I'm actually like wanting to do my makeup. And he was like, I meant the other Natalie. Because both of us are named Natalie and she wasn't in the car. So that was like, oh my gosh, myself, Natalie. I'm like, oh my gosh, Natalie, get a grip on it. You know that you got to think about who they're talking to. But the other Natalie was very kind and shared some of these makeup samples with me. So I have some blushes now to try out. And then these are all eyeshadow cream sticks in like different colors. They're a little bit shimmery. I did try one the other day. I wasn't brave enough to like try it on the podcast here in case it didn't go well. But one of you, I think it was in a DM, said, try out new eyeshadow at night before you wash your face, because then you can try things out and like mess up and it's not a big deal because you're washing your face anyway. So I thought that was a really, really good tip. And I'm probably going to be doing that with some of these. Okay, as far as my business goal, it is to work on designs. I've divided up for the last 3 weeks of March what things I want to do. And these designs are for my Yarn Cozy because I want to do the Yarn Cozy make along, but I haven't actually done anything yet as of this podcast because I'm doing it later on in the week. So I'll have to update you on that next week, but I'm going to be working on brainstorming all of the new Yarn Cozy ideas that I want to create and then creating a list of priority, like which one I'm going to work on first, because I think I could do more than one at a time, but I do find that I tend to do a little better if I have one thing at a time that I am working on. So stay tuned. I'll have more to share next week, hopefully on both of these first two goals. And then my knitting goal, my yarny goal for the month is to begin the All of the Lights cardigan. So I made some big progress on that this week because I did order my yarn from the Little Wolf Knits. So that feels really, really good. I'm making my way there. Hopefully I will at least be swatched because now I do have to wait on the yarn, which is okay. I'm like not ready to do it yet. I really want to get my Citrine Light sweater finished and maybe have a few days to work on my blanket first before I start a cardigan. So I'm okay with that, but progress has been made moving forward, so I feel really good about that. All right, I think that's everything, and I think I've made another long podcast episode, so thank you as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!